But let's talk about a team or two teams that know how to take care of business. Let's talk about the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets, who are going to be playing for the 2023 Larry O'Brien Trophy. But let's just talk about how the Nuggets and the Heat got to the finals and anything on their trip here that you think is illuminating to this matchup before we get into the series itself. What's something that you saw from the Heat and or the Nuggets that really impressed you on this run? Like the first thing that comes to mind.
Man, the Heat is interesting because I struggle to talk about them and say anything of any value because everything about this team just feels so intangible. It's like they're just willing their way, like it's all heart and soul and determination and grit. And I'm like, what is the basketball reason that they're in the NBA finals? Like Jimmy Butler has been incredible for the most part, although the Celtics did kind of figure him out a little bit. And then Caleb Martin suddenly is an all-star player. And so I'm like, I this team is really hard to predict. I don't feel like they have a chance hardly of beating Denver, but I didn't think they had a chance to make it the finals either. So we're just gonna have to see. As for Denver, I think the pieces are coalescing at the same time really nicely, and this roster construction is like pretty perfect. And yeah, I think Denver's here for basketball reasons. Miami, just they got a glass jaw, man.
It was Miami is really interesting to me because like they've basically the main schematic change they've made in the playoffs is just like Jimmy, your usage is going up, and he's like, cool, bet I got that. And then on the other side, it's just like part of me is the reason why I can't get the reason why Heat fans are so mad at the media and people that do analysis and analytics is everyone's just like, this seems really fucking fluky. um, and
Yeah.
so when things feel fluky, there's two ways to describe it. You say, this is probably a fluke, and here's why. Or you go with your description where it's like, they just got something the other team doesn't, right? They have this spirit about them.
Maybe it's a little bit of both, right? Like,
And I think that's probably what it
yeah.
is that the Heat have these intangibles, but they've also just gotten like the right type of breaks that they needed, right? Like Giannis getting hurt 10 minutes in to game one of that series completely changes that series. He's Giannis, right? Like, and when he comes back, he's like obviously not even close to 100%. Then they get the Knicks, who, bless their hearts, were horrible all playoffs. Like they beat the Cavs, and Knicks fans got excited. But if you just go look at like any of the numbers, it was like, wow, they played really poorly, and the Cavs somehow played significantly worse. They couldn't get a rebound, they couldn't hit a shot. It was just like it was like watching like a varsity team play a freshman team. It was just they looked like men amongst boys, and that doesn't even make any sense because the Cavaliers have good players. And then against Boston, it's just like Boston had like I don't know, like four sub 30% 3-point shooting games, and the Heat had like three 50% or better 3-point shooting games, right? Like it just feels like a lot of good things happened, but they did increase Jimmy Butler's usage. More ISOs, more pick and roll ball handler possessions, and like that's where Jimmy Butler is going to, make you money. I don't know, man. I just don't know how the Heat got here. And on the flip side, as you said, we know exactly why the Nuggets got here. They absolutely fucking smoked teams. I have a question for you. Did we sleep on these teams though? Because the Heat, no one picked to get this far. I think they were definitely major dogs in two of their series. And as much as the Nuggets made the finals and people kind of were like, oh, like the Nuggets, the best team in the West, of course they should make the finals. A lot of people were picking the Suns over them. A lot of people were picking the Lakers over them, and they spanked those teams. So did we sleep on these teams?
Yeah, I know I did, right? No question. I don't feel too poorly about sleeping on the Heat because
Yeah,
everybody
no.
slept on the Heat.
You,
Like that's
if you were confident in the Heat, you are a Heat fan, and not just a Heat
yeah,
fan. You're one of those delusional Heat fans.
right. Like, or if you're not a Heat fan and you pick the Heat to go to the finals this year, that's still to me is better evidence that you're a moron than it is that you're a genius. You know,
Or or you're a good gambler because the odds were so good that you could put like a $10 bet down and make like, like
yeah.
$150. Like, so it's either you're
If you
crazy,
literally bet money, that changes it. Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
you played the odds game.
Yeah, no, so that's fair. But as for Denver, like I thought that it was likely that some team would exploit Jokic on the defensive end, and no team did. He did not face an elite rim pressure guard on this playoff run, so that's one like thing that factors into that. But I
Yeah.
mean, he still won 3 playoff series. Including he beat Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Like credit where it's due. Nobody was able to put him in the pick and roll spin machine, and the Nuggets are in the NBA Finals. And I slept on that possibility. I definitely wouldn't have picked them. I thought they were going to beat the Suns, but I thought the Lakers were going to beat them though.
Yeah, so I was as you know, I've been high on the Nuggets and Jokic for a long time. When we did like preseason like title contenders, I think I put them in like the stone cold lock kind of tier of like I think this team is one of the best teams. And the one thing that kind of gave me a little concern going in the playoffs is, like their net rating wasn't actually that good this season. It was like plus 3 point something, which is like a good team, but that's not teams that win championships don't have +3 net ratings usually, right? It's normally, I think like historically, if I looked at it, it's like you have a +6 net rating is the average throughout all of NBA history. And a lot of teams are like well above that 6. So, but the one thing I think we slept on with the Nuggets is how like they're amazing with Jokic on the court and they were like absolute dog shit without him. It's like the net rating swings like plus 23 points per 100 possessions. It's like plus 12 when he's out there and like minus 10 when he's not. Well, in the regular season, he plays like 57% of their minutes. In the playoffs, he's played 80%.
Yeah.
Like people probably should have been like, maybe this team is like just going to get significantly better in the playoffs because they're going to play like their depth is limited, but when they have their guys out there, they're sick. And they're
Yeah.
just going to have
And
those
right.
guys out there.
It's like, oh, can we only win the minutes that Jokic is on the floor? Like, okay, I guess we'll play him for 40 minutes a game, through
Yeah.
the playoffs, right? Like, and lose 8 minutes per game, and every team's going to lose 8 minutes per game somewhere along the line. So, yeah, it's like that's not actually really a problem, right?
Yeah.
So the only thing that could really stop them from that perspective is a Jokic injury, but an injury to your best player stops every team, so it's a moot point anyway, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that I do like that, like this run by the Nuggets, people are going, oh, wait, like Jokic is actually good. Like he's finally showing us something in the playoffs. It's like, dude, like he fucking averaged like 30, 10, and 5
yeah,
against the Warriors last season. They won the damn championship. And everyone's like, he's got to show us in the playoffs what he can do. It's like, I don't know. Like, that team won the title and he torched them. But they won one game, didn't show us enough. Okay. So I think the thing with the Heat that's been craziest for me is like every single one of their role players, their non Jimmy Butler players, non Bam Adebayo players, just decided to be like, yeah, like, did you know like we're actually way better? Why is that? Like, is it just like players get hot and their players got hot at the right time? Or do you think there's like a legitimate thing that they've done to like kind of get them to that next level or at least prepare them to be ready for the playoffs?
it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? Because it feels like the Heat do something to ready these guys, but I think it's actually more so that the Heat deliberately, as an organization, target guys who they have a sense will be ready. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think the Heat don't instill a certain psychological makeup in their players. They target players with a certain psychological makeup. I think we're giving them too much credit to say like they turned Caleb Martin into a dog. Like they got Caleb Martin because they knew he was a dog. So I do think there's something in like the Heat really do their due diligence with the players that they acquire, and they emphasize and prioritize like what they see as mental toughness in a player as a quality more than other teams do.
Yeah, I agree. That's like they seem to prioritize being a professional.
Yeah.
And if people talk about like, oh, they have all these undrafted guys. Yes. But like they didn't just target undrafted guys
No,
that
yeah.
like they're not like, oh, like our strategy is like let's get undrafted guys. They draft players. It's like the reason the undrafted guys they take and they prioritize when they're going for undrafted guys. Like some teams will be like, let's go get raw guys. Let's go get guys that like, it didn't quite work out in college. They're like, no, let's go get guys that like kicked ass in college and are professionals, high character guys that we know are going to come in here and try their best to become an NBA quality player. And we're going to give them the resources that they need. And it's like, those are the guys that are going to work out that are undrafted because, like, if you're undrafted, you need to put in more work. Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of like the definition of an undrafted guy. Like, you're not ready to be drafted. So you need to work hard. So who do you target? The guys that you think are going to, like, do everything possible to, like, stay in the lead.
Yeah. And let me say this, man. Like, I find that often there's this perception that like this is the way to do it. This is the model. I don't even necessarily feel that way. I think it's about there's a market full of basketball players, and your goal as an organization is to corner the part of that market that you corner, right? So I look at the Warriors and how they built their dynasty and everything. And like they didn't exclusively, they didn't have that mentality of like we're only going to go get true professionals. They actually were willing to corner a market of like, are you a problematic player that was once seen as having star potential that didn't reach it, and now people think you're a locker room issue? Like we'll take you. We'll take JaVale McGee. We'll take Nick Young. We want the talent, right? And so there's other ways to do it, but this is how the Heat are doing it, and they're doing it super well, you know?
Yeah, I do think it's funny where, like, everyone's like, oh, Eric Spoelstra, like, how has he never won Coach of the Year? It's like, well, it's a regular season award. And, like, as much as Spoelstra has had, like, a lot of success in the playoffs, he's, like, not been actually as good in the regular season based upon the talent that he usually has, right? Like, it's not like he's out here, like, coaxing, like, 60-win seasons out of thin air or 50-win seasons out of nothing. Like, he gets guys and they play well and, like, they usually play above their level, but, like, he's not this insane regular season coach. I think what he's very good at is he's kind of like the Ty Lue situation where it's like he's going to try what he needs to try.
Yeah.
And he's got a ton of confidence in his players and they're very well prepared. Right. Like I think their preparation is like where their confidence comes from. And I think like maybe that's like the difference between them and the Celtics, where it's like the Celtics were so good all season that they only had to play one way. And as soon as they couldn't play that one way, they have to make adjustments. And like I think that rattles their confidence a bit more than with like a team of the Heat where it's like, no, like making the adjustments, we're going to be prepared. Like this is what we do. This is how we build a team to be playoff ready. Even if that means like you're not as good in the regular season. Cause I do think there's like being a system coach essentially or a system team is better for regular season success while being prepared to implement a new or different system is better in the playoffs. And I feel like that's kind of like what the Heat do best.
Yeah. Let's give a quick breakdown each of the series because I feel like we should wrap up half soon.
Yeah. So this is where I think we need to start out with. The Nuggets are massive favorites, and they should be. They're, as I said earlier, their offensive rating in the playoffs is 121. That's fucking insane. Right? There's like, and the thing that's even crazier is their effective field goal percentage went down in the playoffs from the regular season, and their offense got better. They haven't turned the ball over at all. And the key to all that is Nikola Jokic. So the question basically comes down to the Heat is not can you stop Jokic, but like to what degree can you eat into his production to give yourself a fighting chance? Because I don't think they can match 121 points per 100 possessions against Denver.
No, I think the best thing Miami can do in that sense is at least try to force Jokic to be a playmaker, which is unfortunate because he's like the best playmaker in the league. But I think that if you allow him to be a scorer, you're gonna be in even worse trouble. Like you, basically, what I'm saying is you can't check him one on one. Like Bam Adebayo, it's funny thing with Bam Adebayo. I love Bam, and I think he's one of the best defensive bigs in the league. But like guarding a talented opposing big is actually like his weakest component as a defender, right? He's more of a switch guy. Like the appeal of him is he can guard 1 through 5, but it's actually the 1 and the 5 that are a little iffy in that. Like he's really strong guarding 2 through 4, you know? So he's gonna have to guard a 5. He's gonna be his primary assignment, right? But I think you need to double and triple and swarm and try to force turnovers and hope that other Nuggets miss shots, because if you just have Bam Adebayo try to contain him in single coverage, you know, Big Honey's gonna get 40 a night. It's not gonna be tenable, I don't think.
Yeah, and so the Lakers had some success, and I found this narrative to be like annoying and also just completely off. They're like Rui Hachimura guarding Jokic like slowed him down. I was like, no, Anthony Davis not guarding Jokic and helping off of whoever he was covering to double him around the rim slowed Jokic down. It wasn't about putting a better defender on Jokic. It was about putting your best defender in the position where they're best, right?
Yep.
I think I think that's the one thing where Jokic can be slowed down, at least as a scorer, is where you have kind of that rim protector coming over to like alter his shot even more. And unfortunately, I don't think that's really Bam's game, right? Like
No.
as you said, like he's one of these dudes where I feel like he could probably play next to a real center and kind of be like super super valuable. But like if the way to defend Jokic is put a 4 on him and have your 5 help off, like the Heat, who the fuck do the Heat have, right? Like,
Because that's the thing. The thing with this Heat team is that like their 5 is a 4 and their 4 is a 3, right? Like, and
or it's Kevin
it's
Love.
yeah, that ain't right.
Yeah,
Yeah, but like it's fine. It works against most teams, but the Nuggets are really one of like 2 teams that are specifically built to exploit this. The other being the Sixers, probably, right?
yeah.
Like, uh, you know, that's just it. They got all the way to the finals, and they ran into the one team from the West that like builds their offense around a star big man, and I don't think they can guard him.
Okay, so I think the next point you brought up about how you slow down Jokic, because I do think we agree, at least like that's going to be paramount to the Heat making this a series. Is what does Jimmy Butler do? Because I think he's the one guy in the league that as a like just freelancing off his man to like disrupt passing angles, go after ball handlers. Like he might be the best in the league right now at doing that, or at least one of the best. And the question I have is, if you want him to do that onto Jokic, which I think is the right decision, who does he actually cover? Because do you put him on Aaron Gordon? Do you put
Yeah,
him on Mike? Well, this is the question. It's like if you put him on Aaron Gordon, that means you have to put Bam on Jokic. Because if you want Bam to be the help guy, you put him on Aaron Gordon.
the help guy goes on Gordon. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so like
But
that's
so
the thing is like then you're saying
mm,
Bam cover Jokic one on one, which I both think we would agree is like that doesn't sound like the best your best chance.
but it's not going to be strict one-on-one coverage in the sense that Butler's primary responsibility is really help there, right?
Yeah.
And alternatively, the other thing is like, well, Jimmy Butler can't contain Jokic one-on-one, right? As good as he is, and then you lose his roaming abilities. Adebayo's a good roamer too, so I guess Adebayo's emphasis would be on weak side help on Jokic, whereas Butler's guarding the passing lanes, Adebayo's guarding the layup attempts, really, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you want to go with Butler as the primary defender and Adebayo,
That's
because then
actually that was
you're more likely to take away Jokic's scoring that way. Yeah,
I do wonder if the right move is to put Butler on Jokic. Now the issue then becomes, can Jimmy Butler, after this 7 game series and looking like he's lost a little bit of steam, right? Like he hasn't been as good the past 5 games as he was the first, like however many games they've played, those first however many games. He hasn't been as good the past 5. Like, do you think he can physically hold up in a series guarding Jokic like what 15 minutes a night? Like I think that's what you would probably
yeah.
need to
Because let me say,
maximize it.
there's a simple answer, which is you're going to use both coverages, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna you want to switch up the coverages and give Jokic a variety of looks, and then throughout the series you see which one is working better and you lean on it. Uh, so 15 minutes a night, it's tough, man. Jokic is going to give him a lot of trouble,
I know.
but what else do you do? Like Caleb Martin is not particularly useful in this entire conversation. You know what I mean?
Literally no one on the Heat is particularly useful in this entire conversation. Like that's like it sounds crazy. It almost makes sense to play like Cody Zeller on him practically, right? Like
Well, yeah, you'll probably have to do that at times too, right? Yeah, that's true. You'll probably have to do that at times too, but like, there are obvious negative trade-offs to you don't want in the NBA finals, you don't want Zeller on the floor for more than like 10 minutes a night. Cody Zeller's a fine player. Like he's a solid backup big, but in the NBA finals,
he is
he's
not.
like a 10-minute a night player at the most, right?
10 minute dude, if he's playing 10 minutes a night in the NBA finals, like
Make it 8, make it 7 or 8.
I mean, I would say make it less than 5 because it's just like he's he's just not gonna he just doesn't give you enough. So I think we talked a lot about how do the Heat slow down Jokic, and I think that's going to be the central discussion of this series. And as we kind of laid out, it seems like it's going to be really fucking hard, just because they don't have the right roster for it. Jokic could always just like shoot poorly, have a bad series, like that happens. But like when Jokic is at his best, which he's been, there's not a ton of hope. But I do think there is a chance for the Heat to exploit Denver's defense potentially. And I think it starts with their two best offensive players. Is how do you how do you think the Heat should attack Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic? Because I think every team has tried to do that. And I don't think anyone has been very, very, very successful. And is it just as simple as like, let's just spam Jimmy Butler pick and rolls?
Yeah, I would say Jimmy Butler is easily the best pick and roll player, pick and roll ball handler that the Nuggets have faced on this playoff run so far, right?
Let's
Like,
see. LeBron wasn't really doing that because like he was on one leg. I mean
yeah,
Devin Booker's really good in the pick and roll.
Devin Booker's excellent in the pick and roll, but like I feel like there's less rim pressure. Like he's a 3-level scorer and like super impressive. Love Booker, and I think he's great in the pick and roll. But like, is Butler? Let me rephrase it. Then is Butler more specifically geared to exploiting Jokic?
Yeah, and that's because like people forget this, but Anthony Edwards was like fucking amazing against the Nuggets because he has that rim pressure, that elite athleticism.
Good point.
I love Jimmy Butler, but I don't think he has that type of twitch and gear on the ball. Like when he's at his best, it's like he is so methodical. He plays at a very he plays at his own pace. It's very deliberate. But does he have that ability to consistently just go full steam ahead at the rim? And I think like that's probably the Heat's best bet is to say, Jimmy, just go at it. Like, no more of this pump fake bullshit. No more of this like, I'm gonna pump, try to get the guy off his feet, hit a tough layup, draw a foul. It's gotta be like 0 to 60, get to the rim, see what happens. And I just don't know if that's his game enough for them to really exploit that.
That's awesome, man. I think that's exactly it. So let's think about this more. Edwards would be the pick and roll ball handler most geared to exploit Jokic that he's faced in the playoffs so far.
Yeah.
Thing is just the Timberwolves like just weren't good enough. Like they were never going to beat the Nuggets, right?
Yeah.
The roster construction stinks. The depth kind of stinks. Like they're just it was never going to happen.
Yeah. Cat was a no show, like just a
Yeah,
lot of that stuff.
yeah. Like Edwards in a vacuum did a lot of damage. It's just that was never going to be enough to make up for everything else. I would say that Butler splits the difference in a sense. Functionally, he's closer to Booker than he is to Edwards in terms of how
Yeah.
he operates a pick and roll. Yeah, but I do think he applies better rim pressure than Booker, probably at the expense of the other two levels.
Yeah. Because Booker made a
So
living by hitting every mid range jumper.
exactly, yeah. So you're right. It's going to boil down to exactly that. Like, to what extent can Jimmy Butler attack the paint in a pick and roll? I think we're going to find out.
Yeah, it's like I feel so bad for like this breakdown for Jimmy Butler because we're like, hey Jimmy, could you defend Jokic for like 15 minutes a night?
Yeah.
And could you just relentlessly drive full speed at the rim? It's like it just keeps making me think of in the bubble against the Lakers where there's just like the picture of him is like bent over, exhausted. It's
But
like
listen, man.
that's gonna be
Sorry.
Jimmy after the first quarter. Like
If there's one player that you can ask this of, though, it's probably Jimmy Buckets.
yeah, but I mean the thing is like they have to, and we'll see if he can do it. I do wonder like that ankle injury he suffered against the Knicks. I wonder how good it is, right? Like he did seem to be a little bit slower and a little less bouncy by the end of that Celtics series. I don't know if that's the ankle. I don't know if that's fatigue, but like if it's fatigue or if it's injury, it's like I just don't see it getting better. It's definitely it's definitely a tough situation for them. Before we get out of here, there's one final thing I want to say. Tyler Hero may make his return. He's quote unquote ramping up for a return for game 3. Does that matter? And also, realistically, are the Heat better without Tyler Hero?
I think that's a very good chance, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, look, man, when we talk about like sub elite volume scores, isn't the team almost always better without them? You know,
It's
it,
especially if they're bad defensively.
yeah, which he is, right? So yeah, I would put him back on a minutes restriction, and if they're losing those minutes, I would tighten that restriction to 0. You
I
know,
mean,
like
yeah, I think the best way to use him is just like you're going back to 6 man. I think he's a great
oh
6 man,
yeah,
and I think they need that. But the only problem I think that you could run into with that is that the Heat's role players like Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin have played absurdly well. Kyle Lowry's even played really well in some of these games. He's had some stinkers, but he's also had some really good games. It's like you cannot start him if those guys keep playing like this. But if they kind of revert to what they showed during this regular season, right? Where like was it Caleb Martin was like 60% effective field goal percentage or 60% true shooting on like good volume on like 19 points per game against Celtics. Like that's absurd. Like if those guys go back to like their previous levels, it almost becomes like, do we have to bring in Tyler Hero to like see if we can't basically get that lost offense back?
yeah. So I think they have to explore possibilities and just monitor it closely. But I would be cautious. That's all I would say. You know,
Yeah.
they're really clicking without him right now, and I feel like that's probably not quite a coincidence. I feel like he's not a player that elevates the guys around him, to put it politely.
Yeah. And then also, it's like you have him out there, your defense gets a bit worse. And against the Nuggets, like this is why the Nuggets are such a pain in the ass to play because their offense is so good. You kind of like, it's like the conundrum you're in is this offense is so good. Do we go for our best offensive players to try to match it, but that makes it better, or do we go for our best defensive players to try to slow it down? But will that be enough for us to score as many points as them? It's just like it is, man. It's I feel bad for the Heat. I mean, actually, no, I don't fucking feel bad for the Heat. They were that fucking 7 seed, lost
NBA
in the
Finals.
play in, got destroyed. We're down to the fucking, we're losing to the Bulls. And, I mean, I'm just saying, like, look, here's the thing. The Heat had a great season. They've had a great run. I think this series is over before it goes back to Denver for the second time. Like that's kind of like I don't see this series going 6 games. I think it's over before game 6. What's your prediction? Now that I forced the prediction on you.
Yeah, Nuggets in 6. That's my prediction too. Actually.
I have
Uh,
Nuggets before 6. I'm saying 5 or 4.
oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah, I'm just to some extent betting on the intangibles with Miami and thinking that they're just going to force of will their way to a couple of wins, but Nuggets in 6. And I would say 5 is more likely than 7 to give an auxiliary prediction.
Yeah. Well, so like the thing that I see with the Heat is like they are so good at not beating themselves that
Yeah.
they're the best team in the league at beating you when you fuck up. And I just see the Nuggets as a team that hardly ever fucks up. Like they just don't have bad games. They don't always have great games, but they very rarely have bad games. And so it's like that to me is where it's like I don't see how the Heat get a game where the Nuggets completely shit the bed and that's how they steal it. Because that's not really like the Celtics and the Bucks were more of that boom bust. Like we'll give you really good games, we'll give you really bad games. But like our really
Yeah.
good games happen enough that we're great.
Yeah, that's right. No, I agree with that. But let me say this. One reason I think that the Heat should be able to steal a game or two at least is that I don't know what the clutch rating numbers say off the top of my head, but I would be more inclined to trust the Heat in close games. So if they can keep games close, I like I like Jimmy Butler down the stretch more than I like Nikola Jokic down the stretch. You know what I mean? Like
I know
there's
what you
very few
mean.
players I want to be in the trenches with more than Jimmy Butler. So
So I actually think the Nuggets were one of the best clutch teams in the entire NBA this season. I'm gonna see if I can't pull that up, but if I remember correctly, they were just absurd. Let's see. Where would this be? Clutch. It's one of them. Do we want traditional stats? So the Nuggets had the best clutch win percentage in the NBA this season during the regular season at 70%. They were 7-3. The Heat were 6-3. So we're looking at the two best clutch teams. Maybe being clutch is all that matters in the NBA, James. Just give me the best clutch team. So let's just move to advanced. Let's move some advanced stats. Okay. So, oh my God. So the Heat during the regular season, do you want to hear their net rating in the clutch?
Give it to me.
32.3.
Okay.
Plus 32.3. Now the Nuggets were plus 12.6.
Pathetic.
Yeah, I guess comparatively. I mean, so the Heat 123 points per 100 possessions in the clutch. Their defensive rating is completely unsustainable at 90.7. The Nuggets 119 points per 100 possession in the clutch, and 106.5 defensive rating. So we're looking at two incredibly good clutch teams. Oh, and this is playoffs. This is just playoffs. This is just playoffs. So the Nuggets and the Heat have been amazing in the playoffs in clutch situations. So I think that's kind of a toss up. But I'll say this: if the games are close, they're going to be good.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, these are the best teams.
Let's end it up right there.